Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I have another Codex review today for you. It's going to be in two parts, probably like the Grey Knight Codex. If you've seen that, if you haven't already, please feel free to check that out first, or watch this and then check that out after. We're going to run through a little bit of the background, some of the pictures and things like that, but we're going to mainly look at the actual unit entries, look at what kind of points the units are now, and what kind of abilities they have. We're going to jump through the book at a reasonable pace. The reason being is that there's two kind of ways of doing Codex reviews that I've seen and that I've done. One of which is going through every single unit methodically, letting you know all the points, all the weapon abilities, everything, which is fine because it's very detailed and you can see the entire Codex. The other way of doing it is to just sort of highlight the best, worst, units, and just focusing on certain things that you think are really good. So that's another way of doing it. So with the Grey Knight Codex, I went through every single unit. With this, I'm going to skip through, especially as it's a bigger Codex. And as I requested in the Grey Knight's Codex, and some people have done, which is brilliant, just comment to which you prefer. And for the next couple of Codex reviews and the previous Codex reviews, I'm going to put together all the comments and then sort of decide this is probably what I'm going to do going forward. Just whatever seems to be best for everyone out there, really, and how you want to see it done. So anyway, got the Chaos Space Marine Codex, very excited by it. It's called Codex Heretic Astartes Chaos Space Marines. So obviously that indicates there's going to be others. I mean, the Thousand Suns, Death Guard, things like that are pretty obvious, but you never know, they might go quite in depth and actually end up with 5 or 6 codexes for Chaos Space Marines, as they do for Space Marines. So that'd be pretty cool. I'm excited. I've got an Iron Warrior army. They're in the first battle report and the second battle report on the channel. The first one's the only one out at this point, but when you're watching this, there may well be more. So I'm very excited personally for this. I'm also excited because it's a new Codex. Whenever a new Codex comes out, it's kind of exciting to see what's in there. I've been very lucky so far, actually. I have currently Chaos Space Marines, Necrons, Grey Knights, Adeptus Mechanicus, and Black Templar Primaris. And obviously we've had the Space Marine Codex, the Chaos Space Marine Codex, the Grey Knight Codex. So I'm only missing Necrons and Adeptus Mechanicus. So I've been very lucky that all the books seem to be exciting for me. So that's really cool. So any further ado, we'll jump into the book. Got as usual quite a bit of new art, like this picture here, which is pretty cool and chaotic as you might expect. You've got some of the older art like this, which is like a really cool picture of probably a lunar wolf, I'd say, during the Great Crusade. Goes through all the background, but again, one of the really cool things about these new books is, like the Grey Knight book, it's got background from the new background. So Guilliman's Rise and things like that, and obviously Abaddon now invading for what looks like the final big battle, the Primaris coming along. So for instance, you've got this page of background, but it'll I believe it ends about here, and these like 4 entries are like newer ones, so that's pretty cool. Got loads of background for the legions, including colour schemes. One of the coolest things, guys, I really wanted to highlight this because I think for people who love background and colour schemes is really cool. Done the Black Legion, but then they've done World Eaters, Thousand Suns, Plague Marines, and Emperor's Children in Black Legion colours. Firstly, some of them look boss. But secondly, also, it's really cool because it's showing that the Black Legion really are a conglomerate of all the traitors and all the renegades and everything. Partly because Abaddon's united them, but partly because the Black Legion was devastated after the Horus Heresy. They obviously suffered all their losses there, but then when they went into the Eye, everyone kind of turned on them because they sort of blamed them for ruining the rebellion, and so went for them. So to show you some of them there, I think they look really awesome. Especially the Thousand Sun, I think he looks amazing in black and gold. So that's a really cool bit of background for you, and sort of a license to get units from maybe other gods or whatever, because you could do this for the Thousand Suns. Who says they haven't got some World Eaters on their side? I mean, who knows? They'd see them probably as a useful tool, just to throw at the enemy while they go about their goals. So you could do blue and gold World Eaters. So it just gives you a kind of license to that. I mean, you could have done it anyway, but it sort of just gives you a bit of license. Again, the map's different. It highlights different things. It highlights warp storms, demonic incursions, chaos strongholds, things like that. So again, the map gives you an even more complete view. And again, we can go through all of this, loads and loads of entries. But again, the Great Rift is here. So again, you've got 2 or 3 stories after that is completely fresh new background, including the odd one hidden in here. And then they go through every other legion. So the Alpha Legion, Iron Warriors, so my guys, gives you colour schemes for them. Great Crusade and Post, which is kind of cool as well. So you get the idea of what they look like in the Great Crusade. And again, loads of background for them. Some really interesting background as well. Like for instance, this Night Lord called Andrek's Wrath becomes kind of disenchanted with just killing everyone, which I know sounds a bit funny, but the Night Lords were originally not like that. And then he starts punishing only those he believes deserves it. So exactly as the Iron Warriors, as it says here, he tries to invoke his Primarch and what the Primarch stood for. But unfortunately, he finds actually a kind of peace. So it's actually like a Night Lord almost kind of turned good, which is really cool that he's kind of almost turned. But then after a while, he just becomes... It says his notions of morality are just broken beyond repair, and within a year he's wreaking terrible atrocities for things as small as breaching shipping contracts or incorrect pronunciation of High Gothic. So he kind of goes mental and kind of actually just follows Kurz down the rabbit hole. But I love the idea that he almost turned good. He almost had a good guy Night Lord running around, which is really cool. Word Bearers, World Eaters. You've got Renegades as well. Emperor's Children there at the end. You also got Renegades, some new ones and some old ones, like, you know, the Scourged and the Purge. We've all seen before, Red Corsairs. We've got some newer ones, which are pretty cool as well. So you might want to look through them, see if there's anything like that you like. So also you go through all the unit types, special characters, things like that. So we'll get to the main event if you like. So, special rules for Chaos. So you have all your different marks. So if you just get the keywords, so you get the Mark of Khorne keyword or the Mark of Slaanesh keyword, things like that. That obviously then applies to you. You get certain bonuses and things like that. You also get a Legion keyword, so Black Legion, Iron Warriors, Emperor's Children. So a lot of the models can actually end up with a Mark keyword and a Legion keyword, which actually opens them up to accessing more abilities, and you can have more combinations. Because there aren't really any that I'm aware of, or not many, that say, if you have this mark, you can have this, but if you're this Legion, you can't. And most of it's actually more of a, you can have this because you've got a mark, but you can also have this because you're that Legion. So you actually get probably more abilities. Their special rule is Death to the False Emperor, which is each time you roll a hit roll of a 6+ for a model with this ability in the fight phase, it can, if it was targeting an Imperium unit, immediately make an extra attack. So, and they can't generate extra attacks after that. So obviously it's specific because it's Imperium, but the two things I would say is, one, for every 6+ in the fight phase, having an extra attack is really quite powerful. And number two, unlike most things that are specific to fighting a faction, how many Imperium factions would you face? You know, any Sister Battle, any Grey Knights, any Adeptus Mechanicus, any Inquisition, any Space Marines, any Primaris, any Guard. You know, there is actually a good chance you'll be fighting them. So it's not as bad as it seems, even though it's specific, because the actual ability is cool, and you're going to fight the Imperium a lot. If you went to a tournament and play 6 games, you're probably going to play 3 or 4 Imperium players, unless you go to a very high-end tournament and then everyone's very streamlined and power gaming, and then, of course, it depends who's good at the time. Demonic Ritual, so you can summon demons, which is very funky. You roll up to 3 dice for your summoning roll, and you get that many of the unit. But you do have to pay reinforcement points for it. So they do take up part of your army, and you've still got to summon them. So I think it seems like they're making it, I suppose, in a good way. If you want to collect Chaos Space Marines, collect Chaos Space Marines, and occasionally raise some demons. If you really want to play demons, get the demon book when it comes out, which I quite like, rather than giving Chaos Space Marines access to most of the demon stuff anyway, and then who would play demons? So it's quite cool. Okay. So there's a few HQs to highlight, some characters, some normal heroes. So Abaddon the Despoilers, obviously one to highlight. I'll just flip to the points page before I start. So Abaddon the Despoiler, in a lot of ways, is the guy you kind of hoped he would be. Obviously you still need the new model, although a lot of people have made them out of Guilliman now, and they do look awesome. But he's weapon skill, but skill 2+, strength 4, toughness 5, which is nice. 7 wounds, 6 attacks, leadership 10, 2+ save. His talent actually is rapid fire 2, strength 4, AP -1, damage D3, which is quite nice. You know, it's not amazing, but damage you could hurt some people. Mainly are his 2 weapons. So the talent is ×2 strength, so strength 8, AP -3, D3 damage. Nice. But the main thing is the demon sword, which Dracnian seems to be maybe the way you pronounce it. So only +1 strength, but he's still strength 5, AP -3 and D3 damage. But you roll a D6 each time Abaddon fights. On a 1, he suffers a mortal wound. He has got 7. And he cannot use this weapon any further that phase. But obviously you can then use the talent, which is a pretty good weapon in itself. If you roll 2+, he gets that many additional attacks. So Abaddon can actually end up with 12 attacks a turn, which is just crazy. Obviously you've got command points as well to reroll, so you haven't really got to worry about him fluffing that roll very often because you can just reroll. And he actually averagely therefore has 9 to 10 attacks, which is just mental. Hitting on 2s, you know, strength 5, -3 AP, damage D3. It's pretty horrible. Death to the False Emperor, the War Master, you get 2 additional command points, so there you go, 2 additional command points to reroll that 1. He has a 4% invulnerable save. In addition, all damage, like minus Calgar, is halved. So I've done, you know, 4 damage to Abaddon. No, you haven't. You've done 2. So that's really nice. That makes that wound 7 really hard to get through. Lord of the Black Legion, you can reroll any failed hit rolls for all Black Legion within 6 inches. Doesn't mean you've got to do a Black Legion army. Just keep Black Legion units within 6 inches to take advantage of reroll hits in combat and shooting. Really good. Really, you can get some synchronicity going there. Mark of Chaos Ascendant. Friendly Heretic Astartes units automatically pass morale tests within 12 inches. Again, the leadership's decent, but automatically passing is awesome. You don't want to lose any extra guys. And he has Teleport Strike, so he can come down 9 inches away from the enemy. He is quite pricey at 240, but his toughness is good. His abilities are good. But the 2 main things... Well, so 3 main things that stand out is firstly the amount of attacks he gets with that weapon is crazy. The 2 additional command points are fantastic because, you know, even if you just have a Battleforged army and a detachment and let's say one of the other like all fast attack detachments, you've suddenly got 9 command points. You haven't had to go mental and have loads of troops. You can have a really nice hand-picked army and still have 9 command points. And finally, the rerolls for everyone in 6 inches. As we've seen, people can huddle together and fit 3 units within 6 inches. So all of a sudden 3 units are rerolling all their hits because Abaddon's there. So he's really good. I think he's worth his points and kind of worthy of being sort of the leader of, I think, you know, the sort of end times, if you like. Another one I wanted to point out was Demon Princes. I think Demon Princes are going to be better in this edition. They look really good. They've got movement 8, which is a nice start. So even if they don't have wings, they've already got movement 8. Weapon skill, ballistic skill 2+, strength 7, toughness 6, 8 wounds, 4 attacks, leadership 10, and a 3+ save. That alone, before you start adding anything, is a really nice stat line. He's got more wounds than Abaddon. He's only got 1 less attack, I think. He's got better strength than Abaddon, even with his sword. You know, he's very good. He has a Warp Bolter, which is Assault 2, Strength 4, AP -1, Damage 2. So again, you might do a little bit of damage. But the main things are obviously his combat ability and his psychic abilities. So in combat, he has a choice of different weapons. You can have a Demonic Axe, which makes him Strength 8, AP -3, Damage 3, but you have to subtract 1 to hit. But you still hit on 3s, and the fact that you'll be Strength 8, AP -3, Damage 3, guaranteed Damage 3 is awesome. Hellforged Sword, which is Strength to the user, so Strength 7, AP -2, Damage 3. So you get the same damage, but you get 1 less strength, 1 less AP, but you don't have to subtract 1 to hit. So it's a nice kind of combo. What kind of thing do you want him to take on? And finally, you've got Malefic Talons. So they are Strength 7, AP -2, Damage 2. So that's gone down again because you lose a damage roll. But each time the model fights, it can make 1 additional attack with its weapon. And if you have 2 sets, you make 3 additional attacks. So the advantage there is, yes, you've gone down damage, but you get an additional attack in return. So you can replace your Hellforged Sword with the axe or a second set of talons. You can take a Warp Bolter. He can have wings. If he does, he goes to 12 inches and gets the fly keyword. He has Death to the False Emperor, a 5+ invuln. Demonic Alliance, which is when you include a Demon Prince in your army, you must choose which of the 4 gods it owes allegiance to. It then gains the keyword, which means it chooses those psychic powers, obviously, and it gets the mark as well. If you have the mark of Khorne, you get +1 attack instead of the psychic powers. So I'm a little disappointed. I always find Khorne, it's good. I wouldn't say Khorne's weak. It's just I always find that they underestimate how good psychic powers are. So for the negative of not having a psychic power, so not having smite and whatever power you know, and casting them all game, you get an extra attack. It's like, it's not amazing. Whereas if it was 1 attack and an extra D3 +1 on the charge or something like that. I mean, to you guys that might sound horrendous, but that kind of feels right for me. 1 attack all game, but then when you get that charge, he could get 4 extra attacks and be horrendous. I think that kind of makes up for the psychic powers, but maybe that's just me. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Prince of Chaos, you can reroll hits of 1 made for friendly Legion units within 6 inches of this model. So it is Legion units, so that's cool, so they don't have to have a mark. This ability also affects friendly Demon units within 6 inches, but only if they owe allegiance to the same god. So that's fine. They get the psychic powers, they can cast 1 a turn, deny 1 a turn, and they know smite and 1 other power. So I think Demon Princes are really good. I think they can be tanks in combat, especially if you do them upright. Again, they've got some nice buffs going on. And their basic stat line, like I say, of 8 wounds is pretty awesome, especially when you're flying. So you can fly up behind terrain. You should be able to maneuver up quite easily. He is 146 base, 170 with wings. So you're looking, with wings, about 200 points. Without wings, about 175, 180. But this is a guy you can build your army around. Like I say, he gives out the buffs. You just need fast units to keep up with him. He's pretty tough in combat. I think he's pretty cool. Because I know a lot of people like Demon Princes, but a lot of people didn't take them just because they were a little soft, perhaps. So I think they're a bit better now. We've got Chaos Lords. They're effectively the same as the Space Marine Lord. They've got a solid stat line, pretty good. The main thing is they've got the reroll ones made for friendly units within 6 inches, just like the Space Marine Lords. So the Lords are not a bad option either now, just because you're getting those rerolls. Sorcerers are roughly the same. You get 2 psychic powers, deny 1, and smite and 2 other powers. So we'll get into the powers later on. A lot of these guys are pretty much the same. The Watersmith's got slightly worse because he doesn't affect terrain anymore, which is a bit disappointing. He does give D3 lost wounds back to a vehicle once a game, and once a turn, which is pretty good because obviously they've got so many wounds now. If you're getting D3 back a turn, you can keep stuff alive for quite a while. The Exalted Champion's quite funky because you can reroll failed wound rolls in the fight phase for a friendly unit within 6 inches, which is really nice. So obviously if you've got a Lord and an Exalted Champion, they're rerolling their hits of 1 and then rerolling all wounds in combat. So if you can get a Chaos Lord and an Exalted Champion, won't cost you a lot of points, especially if you make them basic, way under 200. And you could put them both in a Land Raider with some Terminators. And then they're hitting on 3s, rerolling 1s, wounding on probably 2s rerolling or 3s rerolling. So he's not a bad, cheap option. Something just to highlight there. So troops-wise, you actually have quite a few options because you've got the 4 basic units of demons as well. So, and then you've got cultists and Chaos Space Marines. Cultists exactly as they were in the previous edition, just a meat shield to camp on objectives and or advance in front of your army and just soak up firepower. They're not anything particular, but they are still super cheap. They're 4 points a model, so happy days. Chaos Space Marines, again, actually very similar in pretty much every way. They have pretty much the same options. They have pretty much the same stat line. Yeah, very similar, to be honest. You can still give them chainswords to get them in combat, in which case they get the extra attack. Yeah, the only thing that will really change with them is what weapons do you give them. Obviously certain weapons are better in the new edition that were maybe not as good in the last one. The Chaos Space Marines are 13 points a model as well, so that might be slightly cheaper than they were, maybe 1 point cheaper or all the same points. So again, not a lot has changed there. My knowledge of the demons is slightly lesser because obviously I've got an Iron War army, so we don't really mess with demons unless we're tying them into a demon engine, in which case we will use them very gladly. But we don't really bend the knee to them, so not into them as much. The Bloodletters have some really cool rules. They have 5% model like they all do, But if the unit charges, they get add 1 to their strength and attacks, which makes them strength 5 and 2 attacks each. So the turn, if you can find a way to make sure Bloodletters charge, they can be quite horrendous because their weapon is AP -3, strength of the user, but you'll be strength 5 and you're strength 4 base anyway, to be fair. And if you roll a 6+ damage for the weapon, it does damage 2. So if you roll a 6+ to wound, you get damage 2, which is pretty cool. They can also have a demonic icon. Is if you roll a 1 when taking a morale test for any demonic icons, reality blinks and the demonic horde is bolstered. No models flee and D6 slain bloodletters come back. So demonic icon's pretty awesome take. You can take that for all those units. And on a 1 morale test, you get D6 back, and no one dies, no matter if you were going to fail that. So that's really cool. And there's no flip side. There's no if you roll a 6, your whole unit disappears. So demons in that sense are probably a little bit more reliable. And the Instrument of Chaos, which again all the other units can have, is a unit that includes any Instruments of Chaos, adds 1 to their advance and charge rolls. So it's pretty cool. So the demons are all okay. They range in points, as you might imagine. Just trying to find some of them now, actually. Bloodletters are 7 points, Demonettes are 7 points, Blue Horrors are 5, and Plague Bearers are 7. So to be honest, they're all much of a muchness. They all have their advantage and they're kind of the thing that their god would want them to do. But all of them being 7 points, I think, is well worth highlighting. 7 points is pretty cheap. So units of 20 are 140 points. So 3 units of 20 are therefore 420 points. So it's under a quarter of your army to have 3 units of 20 bloodletters, for instance. And you know, because they've got the 5% vulnerable save, I know they're toughness 3 and 1 wound, but it's going to take a decent amount of firepower to get through them, and you've still got a lot left behind that. So if you want to go down the demonic route, you can. You can use some troops for that. So next stop is elites. So we will run through that next. In the next part. So we're going to leave this part here and then we'll run through the rest of the selections I want to highlight in part 2. Hopefully get to the psychic powers, warlord traits, all that kind of stuff. If not, worst case, we'll put that in a part 3 because it is quite a beefy codex. There are a lot of options. So we'll see how we go in part 2. I will see you guys there. Okay guys, we're going to carry on here into the elite section. So we've got the god-specific units, Noise Marines, Plague Marines, Khorne Berserkers and Rubric Marines. First one to highlight is the Khorne Berserkers. They've got a lot better in the new edition. They've got the standard stat line of Space Marine, but they have 2 attacks base, great start. Obviously attacks are harder to come by in this edition, and strength 5. So that already makes them much harder hitting, being strength 5 and having a second attack. They come base with chainsaw, bolt pistol, frag, crack grenades, hence the extra attack. But you've also got the option to give them a chain axe, which gives them strength 6 and AP -1. So you don't get an extra attack, but you get strength 6, AP -1. So probably a mix of the two is probably best. You can swap bolt pistols, plasma pistols. I'd only do that if you had the models and so it was modelled on. Wouldn't be too bothered about having some plasma pistols. You can take an Icon of Wrath. So, 153. So the Icon of Wrath is Khorne units only, and you can reroll charge rolls for units with an Icon of Wrath. So I think well worth taking to make sure you get the charge on the turn you need to. They have Death to the False Emperor, and this is the big one. This is the one that sets them from, okay, they're better than normal Marines, but they're not incredible, to these guys could be really destructive, especially in big numbers. They get Blood for the Blood God, which means this unit can fight twice in each fight phase instead of once. So they have 2 attacks, 3 with the chainsword, and then on top of that, they can fight twice. It doesn't say once a game, it doesn't say, it in fact specifically states each fight phase. It's not only in your turn, it's not, but they're at -1 to hit, it's not, but they only have 1 attack each, or anything like that. It's just they fight twice every fight phase, which is horrendous when you think they could be in combat second turn. So that gives them both fight phases, then both fight phases in turn 3, and both fight phases in turn 4. So they have 6 fight phases. Like, you know, they get 2 for turn 2, then 2 more for the other turn 2, if you like, the enemy's turn 2, and 2 for 3. You know, they just have so many. It's endless, the amount of attacks they can have. I mean, you can't get too carried away. Obviously, defensively, they're just a marine. They got 1 wound, toughness 4, etc. But the charge of these guys, and like the initial turns over when there's when there's loads of them left, it'd be horrendous. I'm really happy as well because I feel like Common Berserkers have been left behind. Obviously, they've still got old models. They were never that good in the game. Whereas Thousand Suns are good in the game and got new models. Plague Marines were good in the game and have now just got new models. So it's nice that Common Berserkers are, you know, sort of staying in there. So there's 16 points a model. But when you think Marine is 13, it's 3 points for an extra attack, an extra strength, and the blood for the blood gold are all. You can't have as good equipment in ways like kind of ranged, but that's not what they're for anyway. So I wanted to highlight them. I think they're awesome. Go out and get some Common Berserkers. Paint them in your Legion colours, as we showed earlier. You can do that. So you know that would look really cool. Like Common Berserkers in my silver, gold, and kind of chevrons of the Iron Warriors, I think would look really cool. I don't know whether the Iron Warriors would overly tolerate them, but if they're really good shock troops and they don't kill any of the Iron Warriors while they're in their Berserk Rage, then why not? Why not? Then got Rubik Marines. So Rubik Marines are still really good, obviously new models, but also really good weapons. So their Inferno Bolt Gun, that used to be obviously AP3. It's probably not quite as good anymore, but it's basically there. It's Rapid Fire 1, Strength 4, AP -2, Damage 1. So in some ways, I'd probably say it's slightly worse than it used to be, but by a tiny amount. They're still brilliant. And obviously against vehicles, you will be winning them all on 5s, if not 6s, but AP -2 is pretty decent on the vehicle. You know, they're all of a sudden going to be on 5s and 6s to save. The Soul Reaper Cannon's awesome as well. So it's heavy 4, but they've got a rule where they ignore it, which I'll go through in a minute. And they're Strength 5, AP -3, Damage 1. They've got 4 shots each, so they're fantastic. You still have good force weapons. You still get a Psyker in the unit, which is great. They've got a 5+ invulnerable save, so they're still tough. The Death of the False Emperor, and this rule is epic. So it's all as dust. So you add 1 to the saving throws for Rubik Marines if the attack damage characteristic of 1. Firstly, that's awesome. So anything that comes in damage characteristic 1, like a bolt gun, you've got a 2+ save. Awesome, with your 5+ invulnerable as well. Obviously you can't take both, but it's there. Also, if someone does come in with a higher damage weapon, number 1, you've got the 5+ invulnerable if your save goes below that. But also, you're starting to waste 2, 3, 4 damage weapons on Rubik Marines. So either way, you kind of force your opponent's hand. You either go, well, I've got a 2-up save, or worst case 3-up if you're -1, or you've got to start dedicating heavy weapons to killing me, which you don't really want to do. In addition, the -1 modifier to hit rolls for moving and shooting with heavy weapons does not apply. So I believe they can have 2 of those, can they? No, you have to have 20 of them to have the second Soul Reaper Cannon. So you are looking at 1 Soul Reaper Cannon, but at least he's moving and hitting on 3s. So I think Rubik Marines are also really good. They are 18 points. So again, I think they're really good value. It's 5 points more than a basic Marine. And for that, they're getting better weapons. They're getting the 2+ save. They're getting the ignoring heavy weapon rules. They've got the 5+ invulnerable. They're awesome. Plague Marines, as you can see, have the longest weapon chart ever. This is quite a lot. I'm not going to go through all of it. There's quite a few good weapon options in there. They keep their toughness 5, which was the main reason, wasn't it? We took them, you know, get them in an objective, and just sit there, soak up the firepower. They do have the plague rule on a lot of these, which is really nice, which means you reroll wound rolls of 1. So that's around a lot of the time. They also have Disgusting Resilient, which we know about now. Each time they lose a model, you roll d6. Each time they lose a wound, roll d6, and on a 5 or 6 they don't lose the wound. So 1 in 3 wounds are ignored, 1 in 3 wounds. Absolutely fantastic. It's like Feel No Pain, but actually probably better because it's just all the time. Obviously Feel No Pain did get ignored sometimes. And Vectors of Death and Disease. A Plague Marine equipped with 2 Plague Knives, a Plague Knife, and a Bubotic Axe. Or a Mace of Corruption and a Bubotic Axe has an attack characteristic of 2 instead of 1. So you can actually make them reasonably combaty if you want to, but generally they're going to have their old mission, go and sit on an objective and don't let the enemy have it. But they're so good for it. Toughness 5 and Disgusting Resilient. And, you know, returning, like I say, they have quite a lot of options of what they could take. Plasma guns, things like that. Put a Lord near them. How many plasma guns can you fit in? 2. So yeah, you know, you can have a small unit, 6 to 7 of them, a couple of plasma guns, Lord nearby, well, in between 2 units of them, and they can just supercharge their plasma guns every turn with no worries of getting hurt. So they're cool. Plague Marines are 19 points. They're slightly more expensive, but they're still well worth it. Finally, we've got Noise Marines. So Noise Marines are probably, I'd say, the hardest to use. I wouldn't say they're worse than the others. I think they're just as good. They're just harder to use. You know, you've got to get the right combination of weapons, the right buffs around them, because the Noise Marines themselves don't really have any buffs. They do have 2 attacks in combat, but again, unless you're going to make them a combat unit, which you can, but they can only take chainswords apart from the sergeant, so you don't really want to make them a combat unit. The second attack doesn't overly interest you, really. But they do have some awesome weapons. So, and this is what I mean, if you get the right weapon combo, you get a Chaos Lord again nearby for rerolls, things like that, they can really hurt some people. In fact, in a Noise Marine army, you'd almost look at your Chaos Lords as lieutenants. Like, don't give them any equipment. They're only 60 points anyway, or something like that. And then you can have, you know, 5 units of these guys with a couple of Chaos Lords sporadically between, giving them all rerolls. The Blastmasters got 2 frequencies. Single frequency, which is heavy D3, strength 8, AP -2, damage D3. And the enemy doesn't get a cover save. Varied frequency, still no cover, assault D6, strength 4, AP -1, damage 1. You have the Doom Siren, which is like a flamer, but it's assault D6, strength 5, AP -2, which is quite nice. Again, no cover saves, that's the kind of pattern. So, you know, they're getting that without having to have a Warlord, a chapter tactic like the Imperial Fist. They're just getting ignore cover, which is cool. And then Sonic Blaster, which is assault 3, strength 4, AP nothing, damage 1. And again, no cover. So there's quite a nice set of weapons there that you can use. You can have quite a few, I think. Yeah, so you can get 2 Marines within units of 10 who can have a Blastmaster. Only the Sergeant can have the Doom Siren, and everyone else has the Sonic Blaster. Now the Sonic Blaster is obviously, it's basically a 3-shot bolt gun. So again, just the sheer amount of firepower you can pump out having basically Sonic Blasters. Obviously, you've got to pay for them, but nevertheless. Oh, and then special rule, Music of the Apocalypse, which is one of the coolest sounding rules ever. Still makes him sound like a rock band, a slashy rock band. Each time a model in this unit is slain, it is driven to make one last attack before succumbing to its injuries. So basically, when they die, they can make one final shooting attack with its ranged weapons, or throw a grenade. So even if there's more within 1 inch. So what's amazing about that is their advantage is shooting and their weapons. So every time you kill them, they get to make one final full shooting attack, no restrictions, not snap shooting, full shooting attack, even if there's someone with 1 inch, and you can fire at the unit 1 inch, or you can fire someone on the other side of the board. So there's a tank that's really annoying you. You can die in the combat, and then sort of as you're falling over, just go boom, and just blow up a tank, which is really cool. So yeah, like I say, I don't, like I say, in no way am I saying Noise Marines are worse. I just think you've got to think about it a little bit more. But I think they're cool. Noise Marines are 15 points, but obviously then you've got to start giving them weapons. So let's just have a quick look at what their weapons cost. So the Sonic Blaster, which is kind of what they can all have, is 4 points. So that makes them 19. So that's actually good. If you think about it, they are a basic Marine. They do get the extra attack. They're not toughness 5 like Plague Marines, or they don't get every attack the world's ever seen like Khorne Berserkers. But for the same points, 19 points, each of them will have 3 bolt gun shots every turn. So a squad of 10 are pumping out 30 bolt gun shots. It's not too bad. Then the Doom Siren is 22, but obviously only one of those. And what's the one that you can have 2 of? The Blastmaster is 20 points. So they are quite expensive, but again, the unit's going to be approximately probably 250 points for 10 of them, with 2 Blastmasters, a Doom Siren, and all the men having Sonic Blasters. I think the amount of firepower you're pumping out is like, was it 21 bolt gun shots, 2 Blastmasters, and a Doom Siren when they come in range. So, like I said, not quite as easy to use perhaps, but really cool. Chosen are kind of similar. They're a marine with an extra attack and access to more equipment per man, so they're quite cool. Mutilators, I'll come back to them because they're basically the same as Obliterators, but their weapons change for combat, but they change in the same way. So I'll cover them when I cover Obliterators. Chaos Terminators, again, basically the same. They start off, I think, reasonably cheap though. Yeah, 31 points. When you think that obviously they've got 2 wounds now, so starting off at 31 points isn't too bad. And they do come with a combi bolt and a power axe. So the combi bolt has got 2 shots, 4 within 12 inches, so you quite a lot of firepower. And the power axe makes them all strength 5, AP -2. So I think 31 points there, they're pretty good. Possessed are still the mixed bag they've kind of always been, unfortunately. So they've got 2 wounds, which is good, and they are strength 5 and they are movement 7. So they do have some advantages over a basic marine. Their weapon is strength to the user, which is okay because it's strength 5, AP -2 damage 1, but they do have a 5% roll save. But you roll D3. This is the bit that kind of kills them. Roll D3 when a unit possessed is set to attack in the attack phase. The result is the attack's characteristic of each model of the unit. As long as you roll 3, brilliant. If you roll 2, you'll do a bit of damage, but a dedicated combat unit. And if you roll 1, I mean, it's just not going to be enough. And that's the problem. Unfortunately, if they always had 3 attacks and their weapons changed, as much as I know that would be frustrating sometimes, because anything can hurt anything now, you'd be like, okay, I can kind of hack that problem. But knowing that you could rock up, charge in, and have 1 attack each is, I just don't think it's good enough, to be honest. They're not a favourite of mine, and they're 22 points, so you can have a Khorne Berserker for 3 less points. And when I look at what they can do, I'd take the Khorne Berserker. How Brutes like Dreadnoughts have got a lot better. You know, they've got 8 wounds, they've got 4 attacks in combat now, and they start off pretty cheap as well. Hell Brutes are 72 points. By the time you give them equipment, they'll be 130, 140, so not really chronically expensive. So they're certainly a decent option if you want to put something in one of the drop pods or something like that, or you know, the Chaos ones you can get from Forge World, or you want to have something. I mean, the way I use mine is in like a counter-attacking unit. So I've got Iron Warriors who just sit at the back and fire. He's one of the units that goes forward and tries to counter-attack as the enemy's about to hit you. So he's okay in that role. He's not too bad, but they're certainly not a highlight, I wouldn't say. When you look at the Space Marine Dreadnoughts, and you've got the Redemptor, which is horrendous. It's got 14 wounds and it's awesome, and its firing weapons are brilliant, but also obviously it's more expensive. But you've got things like the Ironclad as well, that's toughness 8. I just think the Space Marines have got a bit more flexibility. He's still kind of a standard Dreadnought, and there's nothing in there you can upgrade him with that makes him an Ironclad or makes him a Redemptor or makes him something really awesome. So cool unit, still worth taking, great model, but not a highlight. So you've got Chaos Bikers, obviously just Marines on bikes pretty much. Chaos Spawn, Raptors and Warp Talons. I'm not sure about their points value. I was going to say I think they've come down quite a bit, because Warp Talons are 15 points and Raptors are 17. Obviously you've got to give them their weapons though. So Warp Talons has 2 Lightning Claws. Lightning Claws are 12 points a model. So Warp Talons are 27. But they do have 2 attacks because they have Lightning Claws, like a pair. So they're not too bad when you think that each of them's got Lightning Claws and they've got 2 attacks each. 27 points is okay. Again, you're kind of hoping you've got some sort of delivery system. They do have Warflame Strike, which means they can drop down and deep strike. So that helps a little bit. You're unlikely to charge, but 1, you may do. But secondly, you are giving your opponent 1 turn. You have got 1 turn to react to these guys. So they're not too bad. 10 of them would be 270 points. They've got 5+ invulnerable as well, which I think is a big thing for them. So you can weather that round of fire a bit better. Raptors can deep strike as well. They have Death to the False Emperor as well. They have Fearsome Visage, which means units within 1 subtract 1 from their leadership characteristic. Good rule, but would prefer the 5+ invulnerable save. Raptors, at a base, they won't have to pay for any of their stuff. So Raptors are 17 points. But obviously you're going to want to give them melter guns or something like that. So a unit of 10 of those is probably only just shy of 200 probably. You know, a couple of metal guns, unit 10, power fist for the leader, something like that. But again, if you've got a lot of them, or you've got someone who can make them reroll charges, things like that, maybe they're pretty good. But otherwise, I just feel like they're going to drop down and die. The way I would use Raptors is little 5-man squads, because they can have 2 melter guns no matter what the size of the squad is. So obviously that would be quite nice then to, or plasma guns, drop down and ambush, and then you're not paying too many points for the unit. 17 points each, so they are about 85 points. Your 2 metal guns, they're only about 100 points for the squad with 2 metal guns, about 100 points. So you could have a couple of those and drop down within 12, but unfortunately you wouldn't be within 6, so you've still got that issue. So possibly plasma guns instead, because you'll get within rapid fire, and potentially supercharge, because they're going to be dead next turn anyway. So if you roll ones, whatever, and you can use them as like kind of suicide damage squads maybe. So Raptors and Warp Talons continue, I think, to be good, but you've got to have a real strategy in mind to use them. Havocs, I believe, are quite nice and cheap actually. Havocs, they're 13 points, which obviously is Space Marine points, but because a lot of the heavy weapons have come down in points, I don't think they're that bad. So if you gave them all a last cannon, the most expensive one, they would be about 165 points, which, you know, considering you've got 4 last cannons, is okay. Maybe a little pricey, but it's not too bad. That's some quite serious firepower. But you can give them things like a heavy bolter, for instance, if I can find it, which is 10 points per model. So all of a sudden now you're looking at about 100 points for 4 heavy bolters. Missile launchers are 25, so they're quite expensive because of the flexibility you've got there. So Havocs are more of an option than they used to be, I think, because the weapons are cheaper. But again, I think you're probably better off taking vehicles. So for instance, the Predator, Annihilator, Chaos version, you'll get for pretty much the same points as 4 of those with last cannons. You get the same amount of shots, but it's probably more survivable than they are. So I'd probably take the Chaos Predator, to be honest. So we're on to Obliterators. So this is definitely one I wanted to highlight. So Obliterators now. At first, I didn't think they were that good. I must admit, I thought they looked way too unpredictable. They have come down in points a little bit, but we're talking like, is it 5 to 7 points a model? So, you know, it's not blowing your socks off. And I thought they were just a bit unpredictable. I played a game with them. Didn't think too much of them in that game either. You can see the game on the channel. And I was a little underwhelmed. But when I think the unpredictability isn't as much an issue as I thought, sorry. And when I actually sat down and kind of did the maths on them, because I've got Obliterators, being an Iron Warriors player, obviously Obliterators are very good in every army, but being an Iron Warriors player as well, I thought I've got to have these really. I was really disappointed. I didn't think they looked very good. And I sat down and did the maths, and actually I think they're actually a really good unit that's a bit of a steal, points-wise. So they are Weapon Skill, Ballistic Skill 3+, Strength 5, Toughness 4, 3 wounds, that's nice survivable, 3 attacks, leadership 8, 2+, save. Now, one thing to get out of the way straight away, they don't have power fists or anything anymore. In combat, they don't do anything. So don't think these guys are going to deep strike then charge into combat, or again be maybe a counter charge unit again, like I would use them in my Iron Warriors as shoot, charge, because basically they have nothing in combat. Still 3 attacks, Weapon Skill 3+, Strength 5. It's not like they can't do anything, but their weapons don't work in combat. They don't get their special weapons, they don't have power fists like they used to, so they'll bounce off most things really. They might be able to tie someone up, but that's about the limit. But their guns, so you roll this every turn, they've got a 5+ invulnerable save and they can still deep strike. The guns you roll every turn, and you get strength 6 plus D3, AP minus D3, damage D3. So you take the average, because that's what you're going to averagely roll, which is strength 8, AP minus 2, damage 2. I thought that looks solid. It's pretty decent. If you do the maths, you're killing quite a lot of stuff. But their assault 4, and that's the thing that really matters. They have 4 shots each, so you get 12 shots from 3 of them. So 12 shots, strength 7, AP minus 1, damage 1, which is the worst you can get. Even that's not bad. It's nothing to write home about. It's not bad. But to think that you could roll strength 9, AP minus 3, damage 3 is horrendous. And like I say, even the average one of damage 2, AP minus 2, strength 8 is really good. So the fact that you can roll that every turn, you can only have squads of 3, but obviously you can just have multiples. 12 shots between them is horrendous. And they could, literally, if you roll good enough on the strength, AP and damage, I know it is unpredictable, but if you roll well enough, you can wreck knights. I mean, you have to get pretty lucky, but you can potentially even wreck a knight there. So anyone who's got Obliterators or is thinking of getting them, keep them in the army or go out and buy them. They're really, really good. They're a little bit cheaper. The guns are better. You do have the slight weakness of not being as good in combat anymore. They can't be troops for Iron Warriors, unfortunately. And you also have the unpredictability of the weapons, which when you could choose, you know, you could always have that last cannon. I'm shooting a knight, I'll have a last cannon. Whereas this, it's luck whether you get something like a last cannon. But the general purpose of those weapons and the fact you have 4 shots now is awesome, I have to say. And so I think Obliterators are quite the auto choice. So we'll cover Mutilators now, which I said I was going to do. So they're their combat brethren. So we'll cover them now before we move on.